Okay, we'll start with this. Got a jam-packed weekend of action with fights happening all over the world in Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, WBC final eliminator to crown a mandatory challenger for the winner of another fight set to go down this weekend, Mercado versus Juarez. Chiwandire versus Muñoz. WBC final eliminator. Winner of the fight becomes the mandatory challenger for the WBC's super bantamweight title. Mexico's own Loba Muñoz, Zulina Muñoz, who's about 9 years older than Chiwandire Chiwandire. A lot more experienced, though also a lot more weathered, a lot more war-torn. She's coming off that knockout loss to Denmark's own Dina Thorsland. That was 11 months ago. Loba Muñoz got dropped 2 times in that fight before the fight was ultimately stopped. And it's been close to a year's time since then. This thing was actually supposed to go down. This fight between Loba Muñoz and Chiwandire Chiwandire, this was supposed to go down back in August. It was postponed 2 times, from August to October 1st. From October 1st to October 15th, this weekend. So on the premise that the fight actually happens, on the premise that the fight actually goes down, Loba Muñoz may not be what she used to be, but she might still have enough to beat somebody like Chiwandire Chiwandire, who on paper would seem a maintenance fight, a keep busy fight for someone as experienced as Loba Muñoz. A veteran of 59 professional contests, 59 professional bouts. I don't think Loba Muñoz is so past it, so over the hill, that she can't secure a points decision win over Chiwandire Chiwandire, who for the most part holds victories over pedestrian-level opponents, pedestrian-level fighters, local girls. Not like Chiwandire Chiwandire hasn't been beat before. She has been beat before by lesser girls, lesser fighters than Loba Muñoz. I understand it doesn't help the situation that Loba Muñoz is coming right off a knockout loss to Dina Thorsland, but Chiwandire Chiwandire is no Dina Thorsland. What that communicates to me is that you have to compete at a certain level, to beat today's Zulina Muñoz, and I'm not convinced Chiwandire competes at that level. No, sir. Even though Zulina's coming off a knockout loss, and even though Chiwandire is the one with home field advantage, it's hard for me to go against a fighter as experienced as Loba Muñoz in this situation. So I'm going to go with Loba Muñoz to win a points decision. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I think Zulina's got enough left. She can win a points decision and become the mandatory challenger for the winner of Mercado versus Juarez, who she would undoubtedly face sometime next year. Mercado versus Juarez set to go down this weekend, south of the border. Jaime Mercado, the reigning champion, versus Mariana Juarez, the challenger and former champion, the veteran. Veteran is right. She's 18 years older than Jaime Mercado. Classic stylistic matchup of the boxer versus the puncher. Mariana Juarez, the boxer, and Jaime Mercado, the puncher. The mid-range to inside fighter, the swarmer. Mariana Juarez is certainly a lot more experienced than the reigning champion than young Jaime Mercado. And that doesn't necessarily mean that Jaime is a greenhorn, that she's wet behind the ears. She's just more wet behind the ears than Barbie is. The edge, as it were, in experience, the edge in experience, well, that would have to go to Barbie Juarez. The thing is, there is such a thing as being too experienced, being a bit too long in the tooth. And I think that applies to Barbie. In this fight, unlike the previous fight we talked about, I feel like Barbie's experiences and the weight of 70 professional contests, 70 professional bouts. I think Barbie Juarez here today at 42 years old, I think she's going to feel it. This weekend, I think the weight of 70 professional contests at 42 years old, having debuted as a professional. Having debuted as a professional 24 years ago in 1998. I don't like Barbie's chances. I'm just going to be honest.
In this fight, unlike the previous one, we just talked about, I think all that experience is working against Barbie.
Not good circumstances for Barbie. The last time we saw her, she was thoroughly outclassed by Jackie Nava, yet another veteran fighter, legend of the sport, who has since retired.
That was approximately a year ago. A year before that, she received a thorough thrashing, a beating at the hands of her countrywoman, Yuli Hangluna. I mean, when you think about how the last 2 years have been for Barbie Juarez, particularly in the month of October, she got her ass kicked by Yuli Hangluna in October. That was in October of 2020. In October of 2021, the following year, she was thoroughly outclassed by Jackie Nava. And here she is again, returning to action in October, fighting a fighter that's 18 years younger than she is, approximately 12 months out from her last professional loss. Her last
fight. I have to be honest, Barbie has a storied career and she is a legend in her own way, but I don't like her chances this weekend, I don't.
She could pry the green belt away from Benavidez Mercado at 42 years old. That would be monumental, but being honest with you, I don't believe in fairy tales. I believe that Benavidez Mercado's mid-range to inside, come-forward, swarming style...
The pressure she applies, I feel like Barbie Juarez is going to feel every bit of 42 years old.
Barbie Juarez, a characteristically cerebral fighter, a technician, a technical fighter, not an artillery fighter. An artillery fighter would have to be Benavidez Mercado. She's the mid-range to inside swarmer. She's the pressure fighter.
There's not much chance of Barbie Juarez knocking Yami out. Barbie's not a knockout puncher, and Yami...
Yeah, Barbie's not a knockout puncher, and even if she were, Benavidez Mercado's no stranger to sharing the ring with big punchers. Lest we forget, she went the distance with Amanda Serrano upstairs at featherweight. If she could take Amanda Serrano's best, I'd wager she can take a 42-year-old Barbie Juarez's best.
I don't get the sense that Barbie Juarez can get her respect. I don't think she can keep her off, keep her out.
I think Benavidez Mercado...
I think she wins a points decision on volume, on activity, on making the old girl feel like an old girl.
I think this will be a Benavidez Mercado akin to the one we saw against Alejandra Guzman, akin to the one we saw against Angelica Rascon.
Except that she is now a more experienced fighter than she was then.
No, I think it's all going to come together for Benavidez Mercado this weekend. I think she will retain the WBC Super Bantamweight title. I think she will outpoint Barbie Juarez. I don't know that she stops Barbie. Barbie took a lot of hard shots at the hands of Yuli Hangluna, but she stayed in there. She didn't go down, and she didn't go out. So I think she will hear the final bell, but when she does, she'll be losing on the cards. I have Benavidez Mercado winning a points decision this weekend.
A lot of rumors who he's going to fight next. What is next for David? Do we know yet?
Nobody will fight on December or January. Most likely January will be.
You heard that from the horse's mouth. That is Samson Lukowicz, David Benavidez's promoter, and it appears that David is all but one and done for the rest of the year. He's not set to return until the very end of it, but more than likely, he won't return until January. That will mean that all David has done in the last 12 months, once this year is over, is have a foregone conclusion fight with David Lemieux, and you're telling me that this is the best the PBC can do for one of their bright, young up-and-comers, one of their unbeaten fighters. This is the best they can do.
Is there a scarcity of fight dates? Is there a scarcity of finances?
That so many of the PBC's fighters are on this schedule, this one-and-done schedule. Keith Thurman fighting at the beginning of this year against Mario Barrios and not having another fight this year. Does the same apply to Danny Garcia, who got out there at least once, just once, against Jose Benavidez, and he seems all but done for this year?
According to Samson Lukowicz, I guess the same applies to David.
So is there a scarcity of fight dates? Is there a scarcity of finances? Because if there is, then it was less than ideal for David Benavidez and his team to go into yet another situation with the PBC, another kind of deal. You know, David's father, he was very recently on The Boxing Voice. We talked about that here on the channel, and how David doesn't appear to be leaving the island.
Looks like he's going to stay there for the foreseeable future, but if he's going to stay there...
Bear in mind that we're supposed to give Canelo Alvarez shtick for not having time to fight guys like this, guys that are barely active, but need to be.
Guys with no signature wins, guys that fuck off world titles based on their recreational activities outside of the ring.
You're talking about a guy that not but 2 weeks ago was poo-pooing all over Canelo Alvarez's quality of competition, the guys he's been fighting when David's barely fighting at all. Canelo, the cash cow of boxing, who can actually afford to be one and done based on what he makes from a single fight. A guy who makes a fuck ton of money every time he gets out there. He keeps a busier schedule than David. So what's David's excuse? What, that the PBC ain't got enough money? That the PBC ain't got enough fight dates? Well, maybe you need to leave the PBC.
Have you thought of that?
You're not fighting David Morrell because David Morrell is fighting someone else. You're not fighting Jermall Charlo because Jermall Charlo hasn't moved up in weight yet and he's supposed to be out injured, allegedly.
You're not fighting your old buddy Caleb Plant because Caleb Plant's supposed to be in action this weekend against former champion Anthony Durrell.
You're not fighting anybody. You're not fighting any of the who's who fighters on your own side of the street, and you're still squeezing down to 168 pounds, and for what?
For what? You're not doing anything. You're not fighting anybody.
Your management, your team, and the promotional outfit you're with, the platform you fight on, they're not even keeping you busy. They're not even keeping you active. So what the hell are you still doing over there? At some point, you have to ask yourself, is it that David Benavidez doesn't have the autonomy as a fighter to change his decorum? Does he not have it?
Listen, it doesn't make sense. Your dad was just on the Boxing Voice talking about how you're still going to be working with the PBC moving forward, but what's the PBC doing for you?
What are you going to do? You going to sit on your hands until Cinco de Mayo of next year and start calling Canelo Alvarez again?
You're not going to win over any fans doing that shit.
That fucking bullshit. That same fucking bullshit.
It's ridiculous.
I don't think that kid's fighting hard enough to change his decorum, if I'm being honest, because there have been fighters on the PBC in the past that changed their decorum. Artur Beterbiev, Daniel Jacobs.
F.A. Ajagba, he crossed over from the PBC over to Top Rank.
I mean, think about it. Daniel Jacobs crossed over from the PBC over to Matchroom, and he actually got the Canelo Alvarez fight. Eventually he did, whereas David and Jermall, those two guys are just left out in the cold with their hands out, waiting for Canelo to give a damn.
So no, I don't pity the guy. This is why I say he's irrelevant.
Him and Jermall. And just in keeping with the theme of news at or around these weights, yet another uneven assessment of Canelo Alvarez brought to you by Andre Vard. Andre Vard, who says Canelo doesn't have a lot of prime names on his resume. The Hall of Fame fighter and 2004 Olympic gold medalist, now analyst on ESPN, recently opined on the Mexican star's resume with Max Kellerman on Max Unboxing. It's tricky, it's complicated, because on the surface, Alvarez has fought everybody. He's done everything. He's taken all the risks. But if you know what you're looking for...
We know what you're looking for. You're looking to belittle him and criticize him.
And you look at some of the names he fought, he doesn't have a lot of prime names on his resume. That being said, I think Canelo is a great talent. I think he's had a great career, and of course, he's a Hall of Famer. No doubt about that. But I think there's a little bit more window dressing with his record than what people recognize with his career. As opposed to who? Show me a fighter out there right now with a better record than Canelo Alvarez's record. A record with more prime names.
Since that's what this is all about.
I think his team has done a phenomenal job. You have to give Oscar De La Hoya a lot of credit. He doesn't get a lot of credit for co-signing Canelo earlier in his career and then also helping with the matchmaking. Alvarez made his United States debut in 2010 and quickly became a star under the watchful eye of De La Hoya's Golden Boy Promotions.
And even that feels like a backhanded compliment coming from Andre Vard, complimenting Oscar De La Hoya on how he matched Canelo Alvarez.
Let me tell you something about Canelo. Canelo did develop under the Golden Boy Promotions banner, he did, and he developed into a fighter that was able to unify a division that stood divided for years. Nobody was unifying nothing.
Not James DeGale, not George Groves, not Zerto Ramirez, not David Benavidez.
Not Billy Joe Saunders, not Caleb Plant, not Callum Smith.
Through two cycles of champions. Nobody unified nothing until Canelo Alvarez landed at super middleweight.
Andre Vard doesn't envision an Alvarez-Benavidez brawl happening anytime soon. They know when to cause Canelo to fight certain guys and when to stay away, said Ward. David Benavidez is not going to happen right now. It's not going to happen because it's too dangerous.
If the indictment against Canelo Alvarez is that there aren't a lot of prime names on his resume, then show me someone who has more prime names on their resume right now than Canelo does.
Show me someone. Canelo Alvarez fought a prime, unbeaten Austin Trout after Austin Trout had upset the apple cart for Miguel Cotto. He fought Trout in his prime.
All those other people that ended up beat him after Canelo beat him.
Canelo Alvarez fought a prime Erislandy Lara against Oscar De La Hoya's best wishes, I might add. He fought a prime Erislandy Lara that neither of the Charlo brothers ever got around to fighting, or Demetrius Andrade for that matter. I don't care who you think won the fight on your scorecard that you scored at home. The fact of the matter is, he fought that guy, and he fought that guy in his prime.
He didn't have to fight him. He could have swerved him, the same way the Charlo brothers swerved him, the same way Demetrius Andrade swerved him.
What about Danny Jacobs, reigning IBF champion at the time that Canelo fought him, coming right off a decision win for the vacant IBF title over then unbeaten Sergey Girivianchenko? What are you telling me? You're telling me that Jacobs wasn't in his prime when Canelo fought him?
You must be.
At the time that Canelo Alvarez fought Daniel Jacobs, up until that point, Daniel Jacobs had given Gennady Golovkin the hardest fight of his career. He gave Gennady a lot of problems. He wasn't able to give Canelo all those problems, though.
I guess that's no good in Andre's book either.
And what about the 3 unbeaten champions that he's fought in the last 2 years or so? Unbeaten Callum Smith, unbeaten Billy Joe Saunders, unbeaten Caleb Plant. What are you telling me? That those guys, they weren't in their prime either.
You've already rationalized it in your own mind that for whatever reason, those guys don't count. Even though those guys weren't just unbeaten, they were all champions.
But they don't count. Nothing ever seems to count when it comes to Canelo. Andre Vard, like many harsh critics, put him in a harsh light under a microscope when he don't need to be under a microscope. He is, in fact, the hardest working guy anywhere at or around these weights, who also happens to be the most accomplished guy at or around these weights. And if there's somebody else that you can name with all these prime names in their resume, more of them than Canelo.
Who are you talking about?
I personally feel that Andre Ward was an excellent fighter, and he's definitely a Hall of Fame fighter as well. He made his own history in his own career. He did those things. But you're never going to get an even assessment of Canelo Alvarez from him. You're not going to get it. And I don't know, maybe it's because Canelo is making history in Andre Ward's old stomping grounds. But here are the facts. Andre Ward retired at the same age Canelo is now. And if Canelo Alvarez retired right here and right now, he'd retire a far more accomplished fighter than Andre Ward, and it's not even close. He beat more champions than Andre Ward, campaigned as a champion at more weights than Andre Ward, made history for his country, becoming an undisputed champion in his division, something Andre Ward never did.
I feel it's important to bring this up when Andre Ward levies criticisms against Canelo.
Whatever you feel about him, and whatever he's done so far, he's done more than you.
He's already done more than you, and he's not even done yet.